slovenský podcast. Takže čau, tu je Roman a ďalšia časť podcastu Krok vpred, do ktorého si volám hostí, ktorí majú niečo povedať alebo inšpirovať, alebo vám, ktorí to počúvajú alebo pozerajú. A táto časť bude unikátna. It will be unique episode. I'll speak in English and because my guest is from Australia. And my today's guest is Mr. Douglas Hyde. Douglas, welcome. I'm very happy that you came. And you didn't came from Australia just to shoot this. You live in Slovakia.
Yes.
And we speak about education because as we spoke before, we have different opinions how it is done, how it should be done. You have your own perspective how it was done in Australia, how you educate your people in Australia, and you have plenty of valuable insights. So let's start before education. Let's start. How come that someone from Australia is living in Slovakia?
Random chance. I was in London. I met a beautiful woman, and she said she was from Slovakia, and I said, "Where's that?" Pretty much. We're still educated in an old way where our textbooks were not updated as well. So Czechoslovakia was known, but of course any revolution or divorce wasn't informed.
But actually, Douglas, to be honest, I was traveling a bit, maybe for 7 years, and when I was in States, they didn't know where is Australia. I mean Slovakia. But when I was in Australia, they were kind of more like...
I mean, there's 12,000 people, 12,000 Slovak people living in Australia. One of the last visits I was there, I walked into a shop and I recognized an accent, and I asked the man where he was from. And he said that he was from Martin. So, it was and when I told him that I'm living here, he couldn't believe it. So.
Yeah, you just change your places, right?
Yeah.
Actually, when I knew you will come from morning, I was thinking like, what the heck? What is so attractive for you to be in Slovakia? You are not living even in capital city Bratislava. You are living in Šale or next to Šale, which is really like a provincial city, or how to say. And you are from Sydney. Sydney is beautiful. It has harbor. It has multicultural scene. It has economy.
It's different beauty, you know. We have surfing and beaches and but you have different nature too. You know, I was in London for 6 years and I was able to come to Slovakia and see the sky again. You know,
all right.
And it's a big sky here. You know, and you can watch the clouds roll in and so you have different aspects. I'm living in the southern part,
sunny.
in near a place called Šale, as you know, and it's flat. It's all about agriculture and the ground and the smells, and you know it's different. It's very different. So we can compare nature, but I mean this isn't the reason I came. It's one of the reasons I stayed. I love gardening, for example. So it's a great opportunity for young people my children, for example, to learn how to grow vegetables and be part of nature in that way. Taking them to the beach is what I grew up doing, but knowing where food comes from, it's as special.
Douglas, it's a funny thing that we both think that what we have is not the final destination, how to say, but we always dream about something what we don't have. And I would be very happy to live on the beach. And you are from Bondi Beach, which is probably one of the most famous beaches in the world. And you telling me about it. It's nothing special. I mean, you grew up there and now you enjoy your gardening and in Šale.
Look, Bondi Beach is predominantly... Well, it's 50% local, 50% foreign. I grew up watching the buses roll up with tourists.
All right.
You know, saving them in the surf. You know, Japanese people walking into the water, and we took turns trying to save them. You know, then when you imagine my personal heritage. For example, my father is from Britain, from Northern Ireland, and my mother is half Greek. So I have this multicultural background as well. So going out into the world didn't seem scary, didn't seem strange. It just felt natural. And we Australians do consider it to be the lucky country. And a good friend of mine, he said to me once that wherever you are in the world, if things go bad, there is always paradise to go back to. You know? So it's not that we want to just stay and live in paradise. It's we always know it's there. So that's a nice feeling.
Actually, it's nice saying, and I still perceive Australia as one of the. It's really like a heaven on earth. It's beautiful, economically strong. It's nice people.
New Zealand is lovely too.
It's correct. You enjoy beers. You enjoy sports. You enjoy in good company. You enjoy horses. It's really like heaven on earth. If you are a guy under 40, maybe.
Yeah, but of course, there's job opportunity. The property prices are absolutely incredibly high. Childcare. I have a friend paying $120, $180 a day for someone to look after her child. 180 a day,
all right,
per child. So we, as a young person, I still consider myself young.
Yeah.
As a young person having a young family, Slovakia is just the best choice. You have cheap property prices, still relative. You have free education, which we can get into.
Yeah.
We have opportunity for dual income, growing economy, and you're not burdened by childcare debts or education debts that they are in Australia. So for young people with young families, this is perfect. That's why anyone who I see who has left this country, they will know as well what I'm talking about, because the rising costs of education and childcare is incredible.
But to be honest, Douglas, also housing prices in Bratislava are incredible high.
Yeah.
It goes up everywhere. But I came after 7 years or 8 years abroad. I came back home because home is home, and as you said, it's a good place actually to live, and we should appreciate maybe more that we live still in Slovakia, which is part of European Union, and we're getting better economically, politically.
Yeah, and it's quite safe. It's safer than, I was in London, and I grew up by the beach, so I was running around barefoot, and my wife is from here, and she was able to do the same. And in London, that was just not possible. So we always wanted a place where our children could do that, could run around barefoot. Not in a sort of hippie-ish way in a sense, but more in a just to know that there was ability, no broken glasses or sirens but again, you're taking it from the Bratislava perspective.
Actually, you are very correct. We just came from UK, and we noticed that in UK on the streets, it's a lot of rubbish. We've been just walking to our lunch, and we've been talking that, look, we have clean streets. There is no garbage.
You do have a very, very hygienic attitude.
Well, I was in Japan, so I would probably tell you a different story. I was in Tube in Japan, and the floor in Tube in Japan, it was really polished. It was, and there was no cigarette butts. It was really like synthetically clean, or how to say, like in hospital everywhere. The culture over there, they encourage even the elderly people to be involved in the community. Okay, but this was Australia. Australia is fantastic, and plenty of people were there, and as we said, it's a heaven where you can anytime come back if you will miss it. And it's hot. It's very hot, especially those days, right? Yes. It really jumped up quite a lot recently. But we will talk about education. I was studying in Denmark, which is a bit different than Slovak education system, and you are completely like you are tabula rasa. You coming from different bubble to our bubble, so you can see what we're doing good. You can see what we can improve. And how come? Let's start with this. Have you been a teacher? Have you been a teacher in Australia before?
No. Actually, I left what the equivalent of a gymnasium, a secondary school, achieved maturity level, and I had no interest in university. The system of ranking, we have a ranking system in Australia, which means that it's based on the subjects you choose and your score, and then your school is also part of the ranking. So you can pass every exam, but your ranking might be lower, and so it's discouraging. I think, to be honest, they've changed this system, but back when I was younger, it wasn't very motivating to keep going in university.
So, for example, if you don't pay enough attention, or you have different hobbies as sitting in a class, so your ranking goes down, and then when you are 18, 19, you want to go to some top shelf university in Australia, you cannot, because your ranking is not enough to be admitted, right?
And if you don't have the people around you from an early age supporting you and pushing you, then the option of these top universities is a no-go. The idea that I went from that school system into needing a gap year, so I chose to have a gap year, but again, I looked around and decided that I wanted to go back into study. And many years ago, the construction business was starting to boom in Australia. And as you know and follow economics, the money follows the bigger population, right? And in Australia, we have a large population of people born straight after World War II, all the way to contraception pill, which is in the 60s, and we call them the baby boomers. So they are now they are where the money flow is in Australia, and so politics follows them, money follows them, jobs follow them. So when I was younger, finishing school, the construction was big. Now healthcare is big because of what the demand is. So I went straight in and followed a lot of my friends into the construction business. So I studied as an electrician, actually. So,
all right.
Yeah.
But in Slovakia you are not working as an electrician.
No.
Do we have same electricity here as in Australia?
No. I don't want to start about that.
All right. But you are teacher of English, and you are teaching at gymnasium in Šale, I believe.
Yes.
So
fantastic school.
All right. How difficult is to become a teacher in Slovakia? I don't know. I never applied for it. You have to go under some exam, or
you do need university education, of course. They're not so strict on which
subject or program.
When I was approached to stay working there, I don't have a university education in teaching. So I thought that might be a problem, but it wasn't, and I was happy because I felt that if I was to study teaching and learning all the methodology, I might feel
boxed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like learning, even if it's the same methodology, but my own way, my own time.
Very good. And maybe it's advantage that you don't have any like diploma and that you passed some special course, because you are like free in your perspective how it should be done. No one was teaching how to control the class or mark or grade or Douglas, yesterday I had here one lady. She's 20 but very smart, and she was talking with me about education, and she said in Slovakia, she said it starts with teaching the future teachers how they should teach. And for example, they teach them in environment which is preset in seating. You sit in tables next to each other. You, for example, cannot sit in a circle. And if you think about all therapist group or about Indians or about rugby's or footballers, when they want to decide something which is very important, and everyone should be involved. They usually sit, they grab their arms in a shape of circle. And she said this is, for example, the elementary problem or perspective. They're sitting in rows, not in a circle. And then when they come to classrooms, what they do first, we don't sit in a circle. Let's.
Well, most of us don't even question that anymore.
You take it for granted.
I feel like everything I try to do, from and one of my first jobs to now is, all through my career, is have a goal, have some sort of goal to obtain, and the educational goal is not to change these things. There's this, the structure, the feng shui of the room or anything like this. I believe it needs to be done. I completely agree, but it's more about the idea of nudge theory. This economic nudge theory. It's a social economics. It's linked with the idea of changing one tiny thing to affect the behavior of others, and we can use that kind of idea and place it into the classrooms or place it into the education system. Now, we don't need to completely reshape everything. We don't really reform it, but it's important that I think we just nudge it in and keep nudging it into the right direction. Like you're pushing the golf ball into the hole. It's the same thing. We don't need to create new holes. We just need to nudge it into the right direction.
By influencing individual students, this is what you're saying?
Changing the behavior of one thing, which can expand and change the behavior of many. There's a famous example of nudge theory. That's there were apparently extremely high costs in public bathrooms in airports and shopping centres and sports grounds, and they found that if they put a sticker of a fly in the urinal of the men's toilets, cleaning costs just suddenly drop. This is what I mean. It's changing one thing that will affect many, and we have I call it the triangle. It's the parents, the teachers, and the students, and it's this triangle that each line, it needs to be connected really strongly, and I see I see it broken slightly. Each connection, each side of this between the parent and the teacher and the student, and the parent and the student. It's all breaking. There's multiple reasons for this, but I think if we were to apply one change, those could strengthen back. These baby boomers that we talked about earlier, they created the tapestry of society that we're using and we're living in today, right? But with all the political changes and all of the corporations coming in, it's fraying. This tapestry's fraying. It's like it's been picked at too many times and tried to just change it a little bit. And now when you step back and look at it, it looks worn and old. And I think that the young people I'm teaching today, the young people that are going through the school systems today, they want a new tapestry, and I think it's time. I think, and if we're not looking at teaching for a new tapestry, we're going to be left out of the conversation, right? So we can either be part of it or we can step away, right? So I want to be part of it. I want to encourage the next generation to change that tapestry,
Well done, Douglas. Where to follow now? So you've been talking about students, teachers, and parents. And from your perspective, you are from foreign country. What are young Slovaks? How you see them? Are they lazy? Do they have attention to be focused? Are they willing to respect you, or are they willing to gain knowledge from you, or they just don't care? They just they have to be at school because it's mandatory? In general.
Yeah, wow. Big questions. The first point, laziness. Yes.
Or what is laziness? You know,
laziness is a problem. It is a problem, and it's a social problem. It's not just in the education system. It's coming from society, culture, home. You know, it's coming from a bubble. It's coming from comfort. It's coming from.
They call it even fancy like procrastination, right?
Well, yeah.
No, I think so. It's lazy. It's laziness.
It's about being interested. It's you have to understand again that you take economics, right? You understand economics in the sense that we're learning the economics of the 20th century. There's no written economics for the 21st century. So if you know that that's an old system, it's like a history lesson now. So how can you engage and be interested in something that you know is now considered to be quite old, right? The big banks of America have announced that globalization ended in 2016 or started to end. You know, Brexit and the big immigration and Trump and you know and so on, and all of that economics were part of that, and so it's like every subject. It's about school books. It's about, you know, where are the teachers getting their education and information from that are passing in. And if you're not interested as a teacher, or if you're not interested as a student, you're going to be procrastinating. You're going to be lazy. So I don't blame the students. I just see it as part of a social problem.
You hit it very well, because you are third or fourth guest where we've been talking about shortening attention span, about ability to focus. And this is what you said, and they said before, that kids, they will be interested. They will focus when it will be interesting what you show them.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And unfortunately, we have social media as well. YouTube, TikTok, you know, these things are part of their life. They're part of their life. And I have to tell my class sometimes, when they're not listening too long with their short attention span, sometimes, that this isn't a YouTube video. You can't just switch off, tune out. You know, you have
get it.
You and unfortunately they've got control. They've got control to skip. They've got control, you know, to skip even that one video. And you know, the next person watching this could be doing this right now. Just well, see what else he has to say, kind of, you know. So we have to understand that that's now who they are, and we have to adapt the education system towards that too. Right? We can't just switch off YouTube or ban them.
That was actually a good point, that you cannot be replaced with the click of button because the lesson is 45 minutes. My question is, can you, I mean, into what extent, or I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, can you change the flow of the class? Or because probably you have to still follow the curriculum, but how much of your own input can you add to make it up to the those days?
I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky because I get that structure. I get those topics, and they are social topics, right? There's the people who created the curriculum for the conversational speaking English maturity exam. This they've created 30 subjects that are accessible, and we talk about them. We learn vocabulary, of course, but then we can break it away, and then I like to open the window and then talk as if we're outside of the school, right? So they have to understand where my perspective of what life will give them. If we expect them to just, here's a list of words, you got a test tomorrow, you know, and you touched on this earlier about the just memorization of facts, and you know, this. Why do we subject young people to this? It's we wouldn't like it as adults, right? So, it just needs to be interesting.
But maybe you are lucky because you are English teacher.
Yeah.
So if you would be,
I know that too. Yeah, I completely
be
feel that.
Historian, you should follow the dates probably. But on the other hand, for example, in Denmark, at some schools, or in Finland, I think so they already, or 2020, they should cancel the subject as a subject, and you should have one general topic, for example, Second World War, and on behalf of this team, you teach history, you teach Finnish language, you teach English. It's interconnected because now we have daily schedule. 8 o'clock you have English with Douglas. 9 o'clock you have Slovak language. 10 o'clock you have chemistry, and it's not interconnected. Yeah. You are like on 8 different lectures.
I liken it to. I agree, and I love the Finnish system, but I liken the Slovak system to imagine that the students are holding a ball or a balloon. I use the balloon, not with helium, but just a normal. You blow a balloon, and imagine that each subject is represented by a balloon, and they're throwing them all up in the air, and they're slowly coming down, and there's some homework, and there's a test, and that's it. And then when the parents come home and they're lying on the sofa, it's like, what are you doing? You should be studying.
And when is the time when you finish with Maturita, you just keep them to fall down, all of them, because it doesn't matter anymore, right?
Yeah, and you can see then why procrastination exists, and laziness can exist, and escapisms, and life is full of these now too.
I read somewhere that you should reconstruct what you believe every 18 months, because it can be 20, 24. The point is the life behind the window is changing so fast. Yeah. We don't notice it because you don't take notes. We just live in it, so we are part of it. And our schools, I believe, I work with students, so I know it's. No, I don't think so. The education which I took and which I finished in '96 from high school is different, or much different, in 2020.
It's not. They're still using the same books.
Really?
In some cases.
So what to do with it? Many people come in here to sit, and they are fantastic like game programmers, or they do some business on internet, and they didn't learn those skills at school. They learn it on YouTube. So what's the point to have? I mean, where we lost the track, we have this Mr. Komensky. Maybe you know him. It was in 1700. He was from Czech Republic, and his main theme was that school should be as a game, or entertaining as a game. Where we lost this connection, that school is where you get in knowledge which you need, where it's fun to be, and now what it is. It seems like.
Well, I mean, I think the tapestry that was created by this baby boomers, I keep referring back to these kind of metaphors, but I think this was created around the problems of the 1970s, and it was designed and made in the 1980s, and it was too controlled by, say, corporations. And I think the idea of standardized testing, it came in and it showed governments a way of, if they implemented those systems into the government to control money to which schools get what, you're basing it all on standardized testing. You can test a multitude of students on the same thing, compare results, and then forecast future job opportunities, which means also income for future generations. Plus, you can also compare schools, and this, I think, is one of the fundamental problems today of the system in the public system, the state system, is that you have state schools competing with one another
for money, or
for money, which equals opportunities, better teachers, equipment, and that's sad. I can understand the private industry. Right, Finland doesn't have a private industry. They took away the private education system. You've got the wealthier kids with the poorer kids, and they're made to learn off one another, right? And I mean, that's amazing, and we will see the future results of that. But when you have the private system and a state system, the private system naturally will compete, just like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And don't mind I'm mentioning names, but and when you put, if you're a private school, I'm a private school. I want Mr. Wealthy kid to come to mine, and you wanted to come to yours, and therefore I'm going to offer him leadership, and you might offer a higher level of English, and so this is what competing is in the private sector, but the public sector is made to do this too. And if your students are not getting results, you're not going to get better money from the state next year. And that means that you're going to be only grade focused, right? And it's a whip. It's
I get it. So how we can change it? How we can get better teachers to gymnasiums where you teach? How we can get them into some east of the country, in Kežmarok, if you know the cities of Prečo, Košice?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, obviously in the places, it has to be enticing.
Or do schools even wants to get better, or they just happy with status quo?
Oh no! I don't believe that they're happy with status quo. I think they want to get better. I think people are always hungry to improve, right? I think it's a natural thing that humans feel, no matter where we are in the world. Unless, of course, you're benefiting from it, right? Okay. If you're at the top and you're benefiting, but I'm sure we can talk about examples of this, but.
Douglas, let's move on. You mentioned grading or marking, that you have standardized tests. And I read somewhere we have this PISA. You probably know this PISA testing.
Yeah, of course.
And I've seen in newspapers that Polish schools dramatically improved. So they went to search what's behind, and they find out that before pupils or students taking this PISA test, they have 4 very similar tests just to get used of this testing. And in Slovakia, I'm not sure if we have one before or if the PISA is on the one which they're doing. So they a bit cheat on this. But my question is not about PISA testing, but my question is about grades. Who needs grades? It's for student, it's for parent, or it's for teacher. I mean, if you give 3 to some student, for who it is? It's your mark, how you can teach him, or it's his validation of how he can understand what you're saying, or it's mark of parents, how they care, or how they support, or how they nurture student at home.
I think in an early age, parents are concerned about the grade, because those foundation years, it's important for parents who have their own busy lives to understand where their child is and if they're in the right direction, and that's the best moment to kind of fix anything, repair any problems. But and once those foundation years are put through, you can then it's not all downhill. It pretty much goes up till the age of 14, 15, I think, and that's when you can let go and let the student do the rest.
Yeah, but my personal grades were very good, and at the age of 14, it went dramatically down.
Was this because your parents stepped away?
I don't know. I think so. No, I just lost interest in getting ones.
Yeah, but you also were interested in...
Yeah, in different things. I was 14, 15. I was not interested in education.
No, well, I mean, that's right. You had more things to do outside of the school hours than study or homework, of course. But so I think parents need it for a while. I think the school and the marking system that we have, that grading system again, I think that's prominently where I think most of where it's needed. Students know how they're doing. They understand what they know, what they don't. They don't necessarily know exactly what is missing, and that's kind of another failure. We need to spend every 2 or 3 years about 3 months of CatchUp, for example, because you can get through the system getting 80%, 75%. And for a teacher, that's just, okay, everyone passed, we can move on. But for a student who is missing that 25, 30 or, even 20% every exam or every unit of the book, that catches up. And so we need a revision time, not just at the end of big time, at the end of when the big exam comes, but every so often we need to revise these things. And I'm sure they're doing this, but, and it's all about the explanation as well. We understand it, but do the children understand it?
When I was working on those cruise ships, when you live in cruise ships, you get evaluation. I was working in a casino as a croupier, and I didn't get marks. Actually, they were also marks, and I think so. The subjects were like attitude, gaming procedures, and it was 5 marks, 5 grades. But then you get evaluation. Like Roman is a good dealer, but he should be more attentive. His customer service is good, but he should keep the pace of the game in some particular level. So I could see it was one A4 page. And don't you think maybe this would be much better than to get 2, 3, 4, 1 grades? And
100%.
What does it say? It's nothing.
100% agree with you.
And we are not collecting grades when you're working, yeah? When you are at work, I mean, you don't get 1s, 2s, you don't get even evaluation, you get money at the end.
Yeah, it is very much, give a dog a treat kind of system. I completely agree. Going back to that triangle, and that's my theory of how we can improve it. So if we see the relationship between, say, for example, the teacher and the student, and I teach personally privately a lot of teachers, which is great. So I get an insight from different
in English. Yeah, I mean, you're teaching them English.
I get an insight from different education systems and different schools from around the area. And like for example, teachers don't necessarily know the students' names in some cases, right? And I for my personal example, I was doing a role play in a conversation class with a couple of young girls. I do this privately to not let them sort of have to speak out loud. And I went, okay, thank you very much, thank you. Next, please. So they stood up and walked away. And one of the girls came back and said, do you need to know our names?
She doesn't want to say.
I said, Zuzka, I know who you are. And she said, because some teachers don't know my name. And I thought she was joking. And I asked around, and of course, some cases, people know some, you can go through a class and your teacher will not call on you. And maybe it's because of this, and then on the other side, there's a lack of respect to the teacher now, right? And so that needs to strengthen. The student comes home to the parent says, how was your day?
Nothing.
Boring.
What did you do? Nothing.
Yeah, nothing. Boring. Why did you get this 2 or 3? Oh, the teacher's stupid. And the parent just rolls their eyes and, carries on. And so the conversation between what the student is learning and what the parent knows is broken as well. And then again, going back to teaching teachers and having these parent-teacher nights. So there was one class that had 15 students. They invited 2 parents because of behavior to come. And on top of that, it's volunteer. You can voluntarily come if you want to learn. Learn about what your student is, your child is doing. And 1 set of parents turned up. So of 15 students, only 3 sets of parents came. They're busy, don't get me wrong. People are busy now. They're traveling back from Bratislava, or they're stuck in traffic, or they're
tired.
Yeah, tired. Yeah, they can see through an app now, and that's enough. And so these little lines that I was talking about was broken. And going back to your point about how we shouldn't be evaluating with numbers, but more with
concrete
feedback. So my idea is that you take every 6 months, you take every teacher writes one positive and one negative, or at least criticism that they can improve on. One sentence, one paragraph, whatever it might be. And they have to do that for every student every 6 months. Now that's taking roughly a few hours of a weekend every 6 months from the teacher. That's the nudge, right? That's the nudge. And what might happen from this, and it would need to be studied, it would need to be, researched, but the teacher would have to know the student, right? So there would have to be more extra excursions or trips where the teacher can actually interact with students personally. The student will then gain a bit more respect for the teacher. Is like, oh, he's not just this person yelling at me or telling us that we're stupid. We're actually, they're judging us with these comments, and we can learn from them. And then the parents will see what's happening in the classrooms. And then at home, the attitude can change, because suddenly if your child is getting negative information from teachers, then maybe it's up to the parent to then say, okay, no more iPad for 5 hours, limit it, or and so it's
like no iPad.
One experience I had, and this is the first one, was a student of mine. She was in 3rd grade, so she was roughly 17, 18. She said, could you look at my writing? And I had a look at her writing, and I said, this is fantastic. When did you start this? And she said, one of my teachers 2 years ago told me that I had potential, and she kept at it. And I thought, that's all it was. One teacher telling one student just that she had potential in something. So we need to be able to, if a student got that for their whole student life, their whole education life, one compliment, what they're good at, to know, and a child would come out of school with actual self-confidence, not self-doubt. Yeah. Right? And escapisms wouldn't exist. They wouldn't need to turn to
drugs.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most extreme,
PlayStations, something, friends.
Suicide.
Yeah.
In many cases, it's a growing thing here, and it's all stemming from a lack of confidence and suppression of problems.
Support. Actually, this is what you mentioned was another good part, and maybe this should be your, final destination or primal goal, just to support students, to encourage them. Definition of leadership, and now I try to say it in English. First one is, leadership is what you tolerate. This is a very good one, and I'm using it. Not what you're doing, but what you tolerate. And second one is that the leadership is that you supporting and encouraging other people so much that at some point they start to believe into it. They start to believe into their own potential. And when they are 14, 15, they don't see things which they are very good in, or you know what I mean? They all think, okay, I know how to write, and what?
You're talking, for me, this is about mentorship. You can be successful, but then if you've been mentored, you can show more. And if you've had mentorship in the right actual circle, you can actually, break expectations. So leadership is, I like the tolerate one, but tolerate for me has a very, also in English, it has a sort of a negative feel to it as well. Sometimes when, someone's talking too much, actually, you go, I tolerate this, but...
I meant it like this. It's more like negative. It's what you tolerate. If you tolerate that someone comes to your class, not 8:30, but 8:33, this is your leadership. But if you don't tolerate it, you tell him. Yeah. It's 8:33, you should be here 8:30. No, I mean, it's what you tolerate. I tolerate my belly, This is not my very good leadership on my fitness.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and this comes down to mental health, the stress levels. As I'm getting older, I used to think about this. I got to eat healthy and got to do this, and now somehow my main concern is about removing as much stress as possible, and then removing it from the classroom. Right? It has to be removed. Students can't. They're so tense. They're so stressed, and because it is stressful. There's a lot of expectations. We're moving up. The social narrative is still locked in, that tapestry, what is expected. You know, I can ask a lot of people whether they have goals, life goals, and they won't put their hand up, but then I can run through the social narrative of, do you want a house, do you want a good job, do you want, you know, and they all put their hand up. So they have no personal goals, yet they follow the social narrative, and that social narrative has a lot of expectations on them today. And you add social media onto that, you know, you have to look good, right, to be accepted. And that's everywhere, right? And this is nothing new. No, this isn't the first time people are talking about this, but it's still existing because it sells, you know, sells cigarettes, or it sells anything. It sells politics. I was driving into Bratislava, I saw a photo of a politician with his family, and I thought, how lovely. And then just a few meters later, there was the advertisement for a shopping centre with a family. Okay. And it was the same. Not the same family, but just the same image. You know, it's yeah.
What you said, we put in so much stress on students. I think so over the society, or throughout the society, we are putting plenty of, interest into results, not on processes. We are focusing on grades, on what it will be when I finish. I mean, when you study at university, we are focusing on diploma, not on actual process of getting education.
Yeah.
And enjoying process. For example, if you are a painter, your final goal is not to sell your picture for $100,000, but your reward is that you spend all the day with your friends talking about perspective, about horizons, about colors. When you are a gardener, your primal thing, what you care should be not that you will have 100 cucumbers and 700 kilos of potatoes, but that you spend all day in garden on fresh air.
Yeah.
You in a state of mind when you are...
It's creative as well. It's lovely.
At school, we pushing them into corner like results, right? You have to know this, then you have exam.
Yeah, you take a group of people to the art gallery and you will give them some facts. This is what this painting is called. This is the artist. This is how much it sold for, when it was painted, the year it was painted. Even if it was factually known about how the painter felt when he painted it. Now you take them back to the classroom and you can test them on that information, right? And we get, you know, all correct or some wrong, and that's today's system, where we should be taking them to the gallery and saying, what do you think of this? What you know? And this is what is known as soft skills, right? This is the important part of life. This is what the private schools are doing, right? The difference between the state school and the private schools is private schools are focusing on soft skills, and there's money to be made because it's not in the state school. So, yeah, I mean, they ban phones in the classrooms. They focus on grades. They focus on results. Yet we could completely create a new system of having Google lessons. Right? It's not about, do you know this? It's how quick, or where's the legitimacy of where you're finding this fact, like they do in universities, you know. So we should be teaching that from an earlier age. And you could have, you know, I understand that if you want to study biology, you want to study to be a botanist, you do need to know the names of the different parts of a flower or plant in Latin. Fine, I get it, but not everyone wants to learn this, not everyone, but if they knew how to find the information, that's a better lesson right now. And we have that at our fingertips. because these young people are very, very smart. They have a lot of information at their fingertips, and we're not utilizing that. And I think, in a way, maybe we're scared of this because we need to keep some control. But I feel the opposite. I feel like we should unleash it. I think we should let them, expand their minds and focus on soft skills and the legitimacy of fact. Because you go out in the world, if you didn't learn how to find something true, you're just going to believe anything.
Douglas, many times come here people to talk to me who are 19, 20, and I'm not sure if I'm behind or they are too up front, but before I perceived youngsters as really like lazy. They are on Instagram, they don't do nothing, but they really read in plenty of information, and every time, most of the time, I have conversation here with them, we are on the same level. I was discussing here the last episode, democracy and Platon and business and all self-motivation books. Yeah. And they know all those information, they using it and they have it from the access to the information via their tablet phones.
That's what I feel every day I go to work. I'm lucky in that sense.
Douglas, you are a very bright man, and as we said before, you are not tied to your educational diploma, so you are a free man, and I hope you will answer me these questions. Why students get in homeworks to home, talking very abstractly, but we can. Why my kids, they are 5 and 4, but at some point they will be 8 and 7, and I will have to explain them what they didn't get at school. But why should I do it? First of all, I'm busy, I'm tired. Why I should spend another hour with them at home? And if I will be not able to explain it to them, they will get at school lower mark. So whose fail it will be, theirs or mine? And if they need to self-study at home, so why we don't twist it? Let's be like this. I will explain them at home the lesson and go to school and speak to Douglas if you have questions. Don't ask me. I don't know. So why initial question was why we get in homework.
You can see the rise of home education
in Czech Republic. Actually, it's huge. I've seen even like 2 sides interview in big newspaper in Czech Republic. But the question was not about homeschooling. It was why I have to.
No, I understand. It almost feels like it though. That's what I'm saying. And we hear comments from my daughter's schoolmates' parents, and they are doing the same thing. They're spending hours and hours.
But if I don't know mathematics, I don't know chemistry.
Look, I can't speak in this case. I'm in the secondary school system, so I don't give homework. But I'm in the lucky subject. When I arrived in my subject, it was like a novelty. It was the little bonus thing that you got. So I tried to take it very seriously to people, and I'm hoping over time that they see that speaking, the skill of speaking is more attractive. Now, primary schools is where the homework really is, and my daughter is the only example I have, and she would bring home a low mark, and I would explain that, look, your mark indicates to me whether you understand something or not. Simple. So you either don't understand something, you put your hand up and ask the teacher to repeat. If you feel like that is not, you're not able to do that because the teacher will say, put your hand down, I explained it once, that's all. Then there's a problem with the teacher and the school system in that sense. But what I then get her to do, for example, is there are a lot of online apps now and things that she can fall back to. And she's 9, so she's in those foundation years. So I torture her. Maybe I'm a horrible parent in that way, but we use an app, a system that was created in the US. It's called the Khan Academy. So it focuses on maths and science, and so she will take the course challenges for those grades that she's just completed, And I say to her, listen, if I see that you can understand these, then
it's fine.
Yeah, I'm completely relaxed. But she will struggle. And what she found was not only that she could complete these, her teacher mentioned how quick she suddenly got. So it's not, I stepped away from having to show her. I just put something in front of her, and it was interactive, and she could come to me anytime she had problems, but it was more about they need to work out how to solve these problems, right? And if we keep holding their hand, then we're not going to. And I understand your point was about why are we spending so much time needing to do this? And I think we know the answer. It's just that there is so much to get through. Okay. So much curriculum to get through.
But it will just add up, in 20 years it will be just even more information.
Well, right now it's unnecessary information. This goes back to soft skills. I always say that how many times have you been stopped in the street and been asked to calculate the area of a circle?
Or a few times.
Oh, okay, wow.
Few times actually, and I calculated correctly.
Wow! In what? Tell me the situation.
It was just random guy.
Yeah, excuse me, I have a triangle. It's right angle.
Let me see. Einstein, another saying which I will completely ruin, but Einstein he said, "Education is everything. What stays with you when you forget what you learned at school." And I've done it, Douglas. I'm very happy that I've done it. And it is like this. We are focusing on too much facts. Yeah. And especially in Denmark or Scandinavia, they do this problem-based learning. Not much stuff. I mean, you still have like theory, but theory is not like holy grail. Yeah. It's more like healthy boundaries to keep you somewhere, not to go too far. And they are interested in your conclusion or in your opinion, critical thinking and stuff. Big shame is that I didn't take the pen because I wanted to make a note. You're saying so many interesting things.
The idea about the systems here is that the Slovak system is set up in such a way that you have a final exam. So I don't have to do anything until just before that final exam.
And they pushing them like, let's see at the final exam. Let's see at the maturity. I will count everything.
Whereas you take an American system and they'll test you all the way through it. And then by the final exam, you hardly need to study because you've actually
already
just
passed the partial exams.
You've picked up what you needed to know for the final exam. So it's adapting different systems. We shouldn't also point out always all the negatives. I think that it's really important to also say that if it was a broken system, then all of us would be failing the system. But we're not. So there are pockets of communities that are failing, sure. But majority of us will be okay, and we shouldn't just point at the system to say it's broken, that's it, we need to completely reform it. We just need to, like I said, nudge a few things in the better direction, right? And say, the education system is the foreground for what the job market is, right? And that's up to the politicians to establish the idea of what job market we want in our country. And for the last, since the divorce, the Velvet divorce, they looked over the fence to what Austria was doing and Czech Republic, and they saw, okay, industry, we need manufacturing, we need and you know what, today we have the best 1993.
All right. But look, Douglas, if we take this, what you just said, we have schools, they prepare you for work, and you go to work to earn money, right? So why we don't take off the schools and we just learn how to make money?
Well, that's going to Victorian age.
Yeah, but I mean, we are producing employees. By some accident, I established company. I was in Denmark, and suddenly there is such a healthy environment. Everyone was that time, 2009, talking about startups, innovation, entrepreneurship, incubators. So I was really thinking like, okay, let's do some business. I mean, we can create some web page. Okay, let's see how it works. And it happened somehow. But when I left the high school in Slovakia, I thought I can get job, right? Usually, even at university description of the study program, you have the study opportunities or future career. But there is not, you can establish your own company. So why we preparing, if the final goal, sorry Douglas, I have to say, if we preparing kids go to school, to go to work, but the reason why you're going to work is to earn money, right? 80% actually even don't like the job which they do. They just there only for money. So why we don't push more on financial intelligence? Why we don't teach people about mortgages, about debts, about money?
Again, you're saying all the right things. Why don't we? We should. We need to. You said you had this opportunity to have a startup, and that's great. And you know what?
I just started to believe that I can do it.
Exactly. And if you look back at the human experience of that, the emotional experience, what that was is you believed that you could, regardless of whether you knew how to or not. You believed it, and that's the nudge. That's what needs to be part of school, because we're not getting that at school. Now, many people will say, well, that's what should be learnt at home. Now, the question is, why isn't that at home then, right? So then it comes to...
But I would teach them at home, but you take my kids for 8 hours away from me.
Yeah,
so
but they're unlearning that.
True.
Yeah.
And I even believe you have to unlearn many things you learned at school.
Yes, of course. But we cannot program the teachers to our children to teach in the way we want them to learn. What we need to do is understand that society works as a blanket. We need to cover everyone. We cannot just focus on a certain person because they might have more money or not. And it's about everyone.
But then we nurture average. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You are good in sports, as I said at the beginning. He's good in math, but instead of nurturing your skills, we nurture. When we take a rope, I'm usually explaining this on a rope. You take 8 students together to catch one rope and to run. But the thing is, you have to touch the rope. Yeah. You can pull the slow ones, but the guys in front, they can run faster.
Yeah, I use the metaphor of or the analogy of spring. So spring offers a multitude of different flowers that bloom, and once the first flowers bloom of spring, it's like that's what gets locked into, that is the expectation of every other flower. So if you're blooming late, which essentially just means you're understanding the information at a later date, right? You didn't catch it at first. It took you a while to understand it. It doesn't mean that you're not blooming bigger or better than the people that bloomed first, right? So the flower that blooms first in spring, that's what is locked into, and then that's the fixed expectation of the students for the rest of their life, their school life. Now, what happens is the later bloomers try to play catch up and think, I'm comparing myself to those first flowers, right? But they lose motivation. They're throwing the book if they make a mistake. They're frustrated, and it seems like a mountain that they're unable to climb, while they're looking over and the rest are going down the mountain already. So they escape. They lose interest. They go away from that, and there's already systems around the world where people are talking about how to fix that. Right? The Khan Academy again. This Salman Khan, he wants to use his system in a classroom where we stop using teachers to teach. We just make them moderators, or the school in the cloud. That was a great Sugata Mitra. He talked about the school in the cloud, and that was about creating a project that everyone collaborates in and works that way. And the teacher becomes the moderator.
This is what they have in Denmark.
Yeah, right.
The teacher is only the mentor. He is not hierarchically on the top, like pushing people like you don't know this, get the hell out of it. He's just not the mentor, he's a companion throughout the lesson. And we had Douglas even lessons, they are completely innovative there sometimes, that kids, they're teaching teachers, they have homework to study the next lecture, come on Monday, and the kids, students at university will give lecture to teacher and other fellow students.
Well, I mean, my students are constantly giving me information, and I have to use my private time to look into it. And that might just be, have you seen this video? Have I seen this song? Or, you know, but that's me taking the time to learn what they're giving me as well, right? So these are parts of soft skills they're learning. You know, I'm coming from a very different system, very different culture, very different way of thinking. I didn't understand tikanye, vikanye when I first arrived. This was a big surprise for me, you know. We speak to our Prime Minister and we can say what we want to him in front of him without feeling like something would happen. That's the freedom of being Australian in a sense. So we have freedom of the mind. And here there is a big fear about what other people think, and there's a lot to get through. You know, a generational mentality change that needs to happen. And those young people you're interviewing in this chair, they're showing signs that things are changing. New tapestries are getting designed, and we should be applauding them and clearing the way for them, right? This is what I feel.
They don't see even any obstacles. They really feel like they can do things in life.
But I'm not located in Bratislava, so for me this is a very Western Slovakian thinking. Unfortunately, things are very different in the East. And how do we get that feeling into the East? Right, so we have to reduce fears, and I don't want to go into politics now, but you know, I think you know what I mean. Where people are afraid, people are scared, people are jealous of what other people have, and I understand that the most natural thing to do is to find someone who's blaming others, find someone who's ready to try to do something, and follow them. You know, they become the leader. You know, but it's a negative idea.
Get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Douglas, I think so we can sum it up that you are very free in your mind, and your kids are very blessed to have you there. As a smell of free world, or how to say, as a smell of difference. Or
I mean, I want. I like where I'm living, and I decided that if I'm going to do what I do, then I want to be part of the community in that way, right? So I want people from where I'm living to have the same mentality, same eyes, the same. I want them to achieve, and then when people say, "Where are you from?" I want a lot of people to say, "Wow, it's the same place," right? I mean, this is an ultimate goal of mine, right? But I think for people wanting to study abroad, right? I think go for it. You know, if anyone is looking into going overseas, traveling, studying, do that. But remember that there is opportunity here to do something with that education, to learn something different and bring it back, and make what is here better for the next generations, right? The legacy that we can leave.
Excellent, Douglas. I think so. This was the longest episode ever, and we should go on for another hour, I believe. But thank you very much that you came.
No problem.
And that you shared your insights on education.
Thank you for inviting me.
What we can do. My today's guest was Mr. Douglas Hyde. Thank you very much.
Thank you.